Hello everyone, my name is Ben and I teach people about the anatomy of lifting. Today we're going to go over one of my all-time favorite exercises for training the lower portions of the lats specifically. Now if you're someone who really wants to grow those lower lats, create a little bit more width in your back, this is going to be a great option for you. I'm going to take you through exactly step by step how to set up and execute this exercise with a lot of little anatomy and sort of physics lessons thrown in there. So first things first, the only thing that you really need for this exercise is a lat pull down station, which is awesome because most gyms have a single lat pull down. And you're only going to need a single handle because it is going to be a single-sided activity for reasons that we're going to get into. So if I just let this thing play, you're going to notice a couple of things about this setup. The first thing, again, to repeat, it's obviously a single arm motion. The second thing is that I'm set up a little bit unusually in the seat, and my arm path is not necessarily straight up and down relative to how you might see a single arm pull down normally done. It's actually slightly up and across my face. And we're going to look at another view in just a second, but I want to point out some very, very important things about this motion here for starters. First thing is that when we look at the anatomy of the lower lats, and specifically the lower lats in the context of this motion, if I allow this to sort of come up, right? The thing that I want you all to pay attention to is really fiber direction in this case, right? So the loading direction, the resistance direction is upward, sort of this way, right? Obviously from the cable. And the way I like to think about a lot of exercises is how do we make a loading direction or resistance direction oppose fiber direction directly, right? There's a lot of directness there. But the fibers of the lower lats run from high to low like this. They run from the iliac crest down here at the hip and from these lower ribs 9 through 12. And what they do is they traverse upward sort of along the side of the body, and their main function is to pull the arm and the shoulder girdle downward, right? So you think about like shrugging, think about like the opposite motion of a shrug. That's kind of what the lower lats do. All of the lats do that to some extent, but the lower lats specifically, because they run vertically up to down, do that the most. So we're basically finding a way to load the upper arm forward and upward in a direction which is pretty much parallel and opposite to these fibers pulling downward. And so that's why I don't have my arm directly overhead like this and the cable overhead, right? Because those fibers aren't sort of running in this direction down this way. They're sort of wrapping around slightly forward, kind of like that, right? So that's the first thing, is make sure that the upper arm is sort of moving in a direction that's kind of like toward the nose across the face, sort of like this, but play around with it and see what is comfortable. So that's the first thing. The second thing is in relationship to stability and anchoring. And I promise I'll let this play and I'll show a couple of views here in a second, so just bear with me. But we really want to focus on two main anchor and stability points. The first is this hand, which sort of gets propped up against the machine. And we'll see why that's going to be important in a second, but it's mainly just to keep our torso in place and prevent our torso from side bending and rotating all over the place. And the second anchor point that's really important is this knee. Now, what you'll notice is that my massive, absolutely huge calves are pushing down through the floor so that my knee can push up through the seat. I think a lot of people are very passive about this pad. Make sure that you are not passive about this pad and that you are actively pushing downward through the floor with your foot like a calf raise so that you can drive yourself up into the pad. And what you'll notice when you really lock in here and when you really lock in here is that your entire torso, hips, everything just stays perfectly still without you really having to think much about it. The only thing we really need to focus on is just driving straight downward. And the only other thing that I wanted to mention about the stability is that with this hand, I'm not just sort of pushing myself away, although I'm sort of keeping my elbow straight, again, to keep my torso back so that I can load my hand in this direction. But what I'm also doing is I'm slightly pushing away from the working arm. So if I'm using my right arm, this hand is not only just going to be holding me and suspending me forward like this, or really backward like that, but it's also going to be pushing slightly, ever so slightly in that direction. All right, so if I go to a different angle here now, if I go to the second video, right, a couple of things are going to become a lot more clear about the intricacies of this motion, specifically what's unique about it. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to notice is that my trunk is actually turned to the left in this case, right? So what you'll notice is, as a consequence of that left trunk turning, my left arm in this case, the first video was my right arm. This is now my left arm, right? So just to sort of go over it briefly, what you're now seeing, what you're now seeing is this sort of situation where my left knee is the anchored one, and if you could see my right hand is kind of forward like this up against that pole, and I'm slightly pushing to the right in this case with my right hand. Okay, as I just mentioned, just sort of the opposite. But the other cool thing is, if you notice that my trunk is here, my trunk is actually slightly turned this way to the left, so that relatively speaking, my arm can come up and across my body, across my face just a little bit. And that's going to be important because if we look at the anatomy of the lower lat specifically, the lower lats will stretch the most if your arm is not just going straight upward, but also slightly upward and across the body. And so it's important, and this angle here is especially important, so that you can notice how the arm is not just getting pulled up, but again, slightly across. And for it to be getting pulled across, because I'm just using a normal cable pull down station, it's not like a resistance is pulling me that way like on a machine. You need to turn your body sort of into your working arm and then allow your shoulder girdle to elevate upward and sort of toward your chin. So I'm going to pause it right about here, and I want to draw something on here. And what you'll notice is, again, this is kind of the scapula right here, like this triangular thing. If the clavicle were here, it would sort of be like pivoting like this. And both of these things need to move upward this way toward the face and the ear. So you can imagine this as sort of not just a motion that is occurring through the upper arm, right through this humerus bone right here, but also one that is occurring through the shoulder girdle right here, where in sync, your upper arm is going to move upward toward the cable like this, and you're going to reach toward it. And then this whole segment is going to pivot upward like this. And then as you pull, this whole segment and this arm are all going to rotate down together like this and like this toward the hip. So if I had to advise any sort of cue to start, it's really cue both from the actual shoulder itself, like the armpit and the elbow, and drive both of these things down directly toward the hip. And if you drive both of those things directly down toward the hip with a resistance direction that is operating this way, what will you recruit the most, especially with that narrower arm path? The lower lats. All right. So if there's anything else to mention, it's really just the fact that I personally prefer to use quite a narrow arm path with this, right? So what you'll notice is that I'm not sort of pulling out to the side, but rather I'm pulling directly down to my hip. My arm is staying nice and close to my body. And as I'm going through the motion, again, I'm just allowing my arm to move up and down in that direction, in addition to the shoulder girdle, staying narrow to the ribs, making sure that I really have a good contact here on the same side thigh and on the opposite side hand. Again, same side thigh is pushing up into this pad to secure me, to prevent me from flying upward. And then opposite side hand is anchoring me against the cable stack so that I can keep my whole torso backward, and so that I also don't rotate away from the working arm, because again, we are sort of turned into the working arm. In this case, I'm turned to the right to train my right arm, and then in the other case where I'm training my left arm, I'm turned to the left, as in this particular instance. So if any of you have any questions about this motion or about lower lat training in general, please drop it below and I'm happy to get to it. And I'll see you all in the next video. If you like this content and you want to learn more from me, you definitely need to check out the Modern Meathead community. Inside the community, you'll get direct access to me for one-on-one personalized feedback. In addition, you'll get access to hundreds of hours of premium content exclusive to members only. When you get inside the community, you'll get direct access to all these different features. Now, I make daily posts covering different exercises where I post videos of exercises directly, the anatomy of those exercises, and very specific breakdowns relative to whatever the goals of that exercise are. In addition, members are posting things every day with comments and questions of their own. And what you can see is as we go through all of these different kinds of posts, I respond to everything, every question, every comment directly, and I'll give direct feedback in the comment sections to all the different exercise variations you post. In addition, when you look over to the left side of your community, we have all these different community forums, but you'll also get access to all these different courses that I have on biomechanics, programming, pain-free training, as well as coaching and cueing. And when you click into the course, you'll see your videos on the left and then all the different other videos of the course on the right side. In addition, you'll also get access to an exercise library where I'm constantly adding new exercises, basically everything that I film in the gym with step-by-step tutorials. You'll also get access to previous Q&A recordings that I do on Instagram and live in the community, as well as all these other specific member lectures, which can last from 30 minutes to an hour every single week. You also get access to premium articles, ebooks, and all of my training programs with just one subscription. So if you want to learn more about the anatomy of lifting and a community of like-minded individuals who are all lifting obsessed, you can start your 7-day free trial, zero risk subscription today.